go. Awesome. Hi, my name is Katie Naranjo, and I am the chair of the Travis County Democratic Party. We want to welcome you all tonight to our charter amendment panel discussion. This is for the City of Austin's May charter amendments. And this evening, I am joined by Elise De La Fuente, who's our timekeeper, Brandon Bradley, who is the University Democrats president and will be helping me co-moderate. And then we have a distinguished panel with us. But real quick, I want to let Brandon introduce himself.
Right. Thank you so much, Katie. And we're incredibly appreciative to be part of co-hosting this event. And I'm thankful to everybody who's able to come and participate on the panel. I just wanted to say that, of course, everyone on the panel knows, and hopefully the people tuning into the live stream know how impactful our city government is, and just wanted to note that that is an ongoing focus of the University Democrats, and I look forward to working with all of you throughout April as we do voter engagement and ensure that as many people as possible are able to participate in these incredibly important charter amendments. So excited to be here and eager to hear what everyone has to say. Thank you.
Me too. So for folks who may not be intimately aware of what's happening in the May charter amendments, this May, voters in the city of Austin will be asked to look at a number of propositions, but the ones that we're focused on tonight are particularly about elections for the city of Austin, particularly propositions D through H. So the first one being changing the date of mayoral elections, that's Proposition D, from what we call the off-year elections, which is our gubernatorial, to presidential elections. The second one is Proposition E, which changes the format for how we vote from a first past the post to ranked choice voting. So basically, we're changing it to have ranked choice voting in city elections if such voting is permitted by state law. Proposition F is charter amendment to change from a council manager form of government to a strong mayor form of government. Proposition G is a geographic council district to create an 11th council member district. And Proposition H is a charter amendment to adopt voluntary public campaign finance program, also known as democracy dollars. This package of propositions is being presented, and petitions were collected in support of them by a group called Austinites for Progressive Reform, which is a broad and diverse coalition of Austinites coming together to make local government more representative, diverse, responsive, and accountable. Today, joining us from Austinites for Progressive Reform are Andrew Allison, who's the chair. In 2010, Andrew founded Main Street Hub, which employed more than 700 people in downtown Austin and was named the top workplace in the Austin American Statesman. Previously, Andrews worked with the democracy program at the Brennan Center for Justice and on speech writing team for John Kerry's presidential campaign. Andrew is the board chair of CASA of Travis County and lives in Austin with his wife, Erin, and their 2 rescue dogs. Also representing Austinites for Progressive Reform is Laura Hernandez Holmes, who's a political consultant based in Austin, a native of El Paso. We won't hold that against her, but moved to Austin as fast as she could. I can say that because I went to college with Laura. So among many things, she's been the Texas finance director for Beto O'Rourke's presidential campaign and the deputy campaign manager for both of Mayor Adler's successful campaigns, and was a senior advisor to the Texas House Democratic Campaign Committee. She's also served as executive director of the Travis County Democratic Party. And 2 organizations in opposition to the package of propositions today are By the People and Austin for All People. By the People is a diverse group of unions, criminal justice reform advocates, environmental advocates, neighborhood residents, and social justice activists coming together to strongly oppose Proposition F, the strong mayor measure. And I believe Jason's going to give us a little bit more info on some of the CLC endorsements as well, just to make sure I'm correctly stating By the People's position. But representing By the People today, we have Ana Gonzalez, who's the policy director at Workers Defense. Ana joined Workers Defense in 2015. Since then, she has established Workers Defense as an influential voice at the Texas legislature and in local governments. She has led Workers' Defense to play a pivotal role in winning policies that protect low-wage workers, like earned paid sick leave, and raise standards for construction workers. Prior to joining Workers' Defense, Anna served as the district director for Speaker Pro Tem Joe Moody in the Texas legislature. Also representing by the people is Jason Lopez, who lives in South Austin and is a precinct chair of 441. Thank you for your service. Jason is a 15-year employee of the city of Austin and member of AFSCME Local 1624. Previously, Jason worked as a business systems and analyst for Austin Energy, and he currently works as a policy advisor for city council member Ann Kitchen. Jason also is currently the president of Austin AFL-CIO Central Labor Council and a founding member of By the People ATX. And the last group we have joining us today, which we have such a distinguished panel, is Austin for All People. Austin for All People is a grassroots coalition of concerned Austin residents and voters. Its purpose is to educate the public and oppose the proposed charter amendment that would radically change the city of Austin's governance system by replacing the current council manager form of government with a strong mayor form of government. Austin for All People believes every resident of Austin should have an agency and involvement in local government, and that a switch in governance would negatively impact the city and transfer more power from the people of Austin into the hands of politically connected. Representing Austin for All People is Mason Ayer, who's a volunteer co-chair and CEO of Kirby Lane Cafe. After his earning his JD from the University of Virginia, Mason Ayer spent several years in the legal world before venturing into the restaurant business. Under his own leadership, Kirby Lane Cafe has rapidly expanded and cemented itself as an iconic Austin institution. The queso kind of helps too. Ayer is the immediate past chair of the United Way for Greater Austin and continues to serve as a director. He serves on boards of Austin Habitat for Humanity and the Austin Chamber of Commerce and Texas Restaurant Association. And we also have joining us from Austin for All People is Nico Ramsey, who's also the volunteer director of community engagement and is a corporate social responsibility professional and civil rights activist in Austin. And he is at the municipal, state, and federal level. Nico works with Central Texas nonprofits that promote systematic change to break the cycle of poverty, provide access to safe and affordable health care, and for queer and racial justice and equality. Ramsey also serves as on the board of governors for the nation's largest LGBTQ civil rights organization, the Human Rights Campaign, and the Austin LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Wow. Many accomplished individuals who are very engaged in our community joining us today. Thank you so much. So before our panel today, we talked through with each of the organizations a format where each organization will be given a 5-minute opening that they will determine between the two representatives who will be speaking. And then there's a series of 6 questions. Each organization will receive a 2-minute response to the question and then a final 3-minute closing. So since Austinites for Progressive Reform is the organization proposing the package of propositions, they will be going first in the opening remarks. And Elise, you'll be in charge of time, and Brandon, you'll get the first question after our opening remarks. So with that, I'll hand it over to Laura and Andrew.
Thank you very much, Katie, and thanks to everyone for putting on this event tonight, this forum. We really appreciate it. We are a pro-democracy reform campaign to make Austin the most pro-democracy city in the country, with a local government that is more representative, more responsive, more diverse, and more accountable to the people that it serves. And we got started really for 2 reasons. One is that Austin is in the middle of a lot of large and simultaneous challenges right now. And we believe that we're only going to be able to solve those challenges comprehensively and equitably if we're able to have a democratic structure where everybody's voice is heard, everybody can be involved at the ballot box. And the other reason we got started is because we're in the middle of a new era of voter suppression in this country, with new barriers to the right to vote being put up every day. And we believe that cities have a responsibility here, and cities have power here. They can push back. We can increase voter turnout in Austin, make our government more representative. And if we do that, then we can inspire other cities across Texas to follow our lead. And when that happens, we can change how statewide and federal elections go in Texas. So those are the reasons we got started. And we're advocating for these 5 ballot propositions, which Katie summarized. They all have in common a few things. One is that they're all proven. They have been tested. They've been run in other cities and states for a while. And the analysis and the data is clear that they deliver results for democracy. They increase voter turnout, they increase representation and accountability. They've been successful. They'll do wonders for our democracy. We have Proposition D, which moves the mayor's election to presidential years when turnout is highest and most diverse. We have Proposition E, which eliminates our expensive and low turnout runoff elections, so we can have ranked choice voting instead. Propositions F and G, which we'll talk about, which would allow voters and not politicians to choose the person who leads our city government. And Proposition H, which would push back against big money in campaigns by democratizing campaign finance. Before concluding here, I just want to preemptively address a couple of critiques that I think we're likely to hear this evening on Proposition F in particular, the one that we're all focusing on this evening. The first critique is likely to be that this is some kind of concentration of power. And I want to point out that this power already exists. We have a chief executive in the city who leads the executive branch. That person is the city manager. They are unelected. The question is not, does this power exist, but who should wield this power? Should it be somebody who is not elected or somebody who is elected and accountable to us? I think the second critique that we're likely to hear is about the process that we followed to get here. And I want to point out that this process that we followed of petitioning to get on the ballot is the same process that brought us 10-1. And many of the same people who are involved in that campaign or involved in our campaign. It's the same process that brought our common sense limits on personal campaign contributions to Austin. And then finally, I think we may hear a critique about me because I am a large donor to this campaign. And I want to say that I'm extremely proud to be a supporter of this campaign because I'm a Democrat. And as Democrats, we believe one of our highest ideals is about the right to vote and expanding access to the ballot and expanding the franchise over and over again to make sure that everybody is heard. And I'm extraordinarily proud to be a part of that effort. But I'm also very proud of where those donations have gone to a union organized canvassing firm that collected the signatures to put these reforms on the ballot, and to a woman-owned, Black-owned professional communications firm that managed our outreach process to make sure our community engagement was authentic and robust and accessible. And I think this is, frankly, one of the most exciting things that I or anyone could be involved in, is to help make Austin the most pro-democracy city in the country. And I'm really honored to be working alongside 100 other people with our campaign who all believe the same thing. And with that, I'll close, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation.
Thank you so much. And next, we're going to have Austin for All People, Nico and Mason.
Hi, well, thank you, Katie, for having us. It's really a great opportunity to get to speak to this group, and we appreciate the chance to be here and have our voices heard. As you mentioned in the intro, Austin for All People is a grassroots coalition. We are all volunteers, none of us are being paid. Our intent here is to help educate Austin voters about these just incredibly drastic changes that are being proposed before our city government. And just to quickly address Andrea's point, that he might be criticized, that is certainly not our intent at all. Our intent is to talk about the substance of what's being proposed here, not to criticize individuals who are involved with this process. And I guess process is a good place to start. We will get into the substance of why we're opposed specifically to strong mayor under Prop F, but I think there's also a process issue that needs to be addressed. By Austinite for Progressive Reform's own admission, they are trying to move the mayoral election to the presidential cycle with the intent of getting the most people possible to come out and vote, which I think is an admirable goal. Yet with the process around this, with these major changes, it's being done in a May election, which traditionally has low voter turnout. It's being done during a pandemic. And you look at some of the major changes that have been proposed in Austin over the last decade, things like Code Next, for instance, or Project Connect. I mean, these are initiatives that have a extensive vetting process, community input, voter education, yet we have an even more dramatic change to our city government that's being pushed through almost by cover of night in a May election without a tremendous amount of community input or community education, which is why we are here trying to educate voters about what this would mean for our city government. And make no mistake about it, this would be a consolidation of power in the hands of an executive. And if you need an example of the dangers of that, of the dangers of cronyism, look no further than what we've seen implemented today by our governor and the moronic decision he made last week to lift the statewide mask mandate. That decision was not made to improve public health in Texas. That decision was made to pander to his base. And that's the risk you run when you have an executive with consolidated power, as opposed to a city manager who's apolitical. City manager's job is to do what's best for Austin, as opposed to a political animal such as a mayor who would not have accountability under what's being proposed. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nico, and he's going to address a couple of additional points.
Yeah, and you know, to Mason's point here, it is to say that this is going to be more democratic. It's not. I mean, we're going to elect a partisan chief executive to the mayor's office, but being that that's the most powerful person in our city, what happens? I mean, we're going on a hope that this person is going to represent the values of Austin, and what happens when that person doesn't? It's a lot easier to get rid of a bad hire than it is to get rid of a rogue mayor. And at what price? Democracy, is that just the price that we pay? You know, whereas right now we have 10 representatives that represent all parts of our city, and they come together to create policy that benefits our neighborhoods. And then with this new amendment, we're going to trust that into one person. And another point, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later on this panel, is the fact that to say that our current system is inherently racist because it came from Jim Crow. That's not only offensive, but it's false. To say that something is racist because it came about at a certain time is offensive to not just people who live the Black experience, who work who do anti-racist work for a living, but also the people who we've lost in this fight for racial equality. So again, to say that this is somehow tied to Jim Crow, and that's the reason why we need to change our government. Keep in mind, when you talk about that, you're talking to a group of people who already have a hard time trusting in government. That doesn't always work for them. So it's best to help the system that we currently have to make it better for all people if we're going to start talking about what's best for specifically Black people in regards to whether this is racist or not.
Thank you so much, Mason and Nico. Next, we're going to have By the People, represented by Anna and Jason.
Hey everyone, thanks Katie for hosting and Brandon for co-hosting. Appreciate the time. I'll try to be brief. You know, I think our coalition has come together to unify against Prop F. By the People is a diverse group of unions, criminal justice reform advocates, environmental advocates, neighborhood residents, social justice advocates, all coming together to strongly oppose Prop F, which is the strong mayor proposal. You know, back in December, the Central Labor Council wrote a letter, you know, to Austinites for Progressive Reform, asking them to stop this effort because we saw the harm that a strong mayor could do. And while we appreciate the efforts to expand the electorate and increase participation in our elections, after reviewing the proposal, it was really clear that the strong mayor component of all these changes was the most significant, and that charter amendment would dismantle the 10-1 system and result in an unrepresentative and undemocratic consolidation of power within one person, within one elected office at the mayor. That would be at the expense of the democratically elected city council. You know, this would transfer all of this power into a single unknown person in 2022. And we're unconvinced that a strong mayor armed with these new powers over the council is somehow going to be better positioned, more sensitive, more responsive to the nuanced challenges faced by residents in individual districts than what the current system affords. You know, 10-1 was a hard-fought change, and since then, we've actually only had one mayor under our 10-1 system. I think we are just now getting into a healthy rhythm of how we advocate at City Hall. And I think we think that a strong mayor would just undo that work. And I'll speak to how the Central Labor Council opposed all of the Austinite for Progressive Reforms efforts initially, and how we're focused on Prop F right now, which is kind of entailing Prop G. You know, we saw these efforts as a Trojan horse, as a sort of way to camouflage this really significant change on our government. For centuries, labor unions have organized and block walked and held powerful interests accountable to be more democratic, to be more free, and to create a more just world for working people. But we didn't see these amendments as genuine democratic reform. We saw this as a strategy of a small group of people to concentrate power into fewer hands. And we really don't understand how that promotes democracy. You know, democracy doesn't just equal voters turning out. There are systems of decision-making, there are structures of power, and consolidating this much power into one office really weakens our progress as a representative democracy here in Austin. You know, Andrew spoke a little bit to how this was the same process that brought about 10-1. And I would just ask all of you watching, how much you knew about 10-1 when that proposal was brought forward, and how much you know about APR's proposals now. I mean, it's dramatically different. And to say that they're the same process or that they've undergone the same scrutiny is just misleading. And we oppose it, not just on the process, but on the policy itself. This is obviously a consolidation of power. You know, speaking to how we have this much vested power in one individual now, that individual is accountable to district representatives, community representatives who are elected by us, the people of Austin. And that's why our coalition came together by the people to talk about, you know, how we should be deciding this and how not a small handful of well-funded effort, an effort of small well-funded effort should really change dramatically our system of government.
Thank you so much, Jason. And next we're going to go into our question phase. So we've been collecting questions from the public through email and on social media. And so with our first question, we have Brandon.
Absolutely. Thank you all again for being here, and thanks to all who sent in questions. I'm going to read the first of which now. Last May, APD shocked many Austinites when they opened fired on the general crowd protesting on 8th Street, injuring dozens, including Brad Levy Ayala. Austinites then watched for months as seemingly nothing was done to take action against those city employees by the current government apparatus. Government is responsible for city actions, and what's been done up to now seems highly insufficient. Under each system of government, crises of confidence in the city will occur, and the city government may fail to measure up. What will each system give Austinites to ensure that our representatives adequately respond, that our representation adequately responds to the failures like the current city's response to APD's actions from the weekend of May 30th, 2020? And as a reminder, each of you will have 2 minutes. Each organization will have 2 minutes split amongst yourselves.
And first to respond is Austinites for Progressive Reform.
Thank you. Thanks, Brandon, for reading that question. There's no question that what happened last spring and summer was an absolutely horrifying chain of events. And Austinites spoke up loudly at the time about our horror and dissatisfaction, and that's putting it mildly, with how those protests were handled. And our city council listened. They voted unanimously in June of last year, a vote of no confidence in police leadership. That was an 11-0 vote. And little happened after that to bring that no confidence into reality. Because the fact of the matter is that the city manager today, even though that role is appointed by the council, possesses a kind of administrative veto. Even when it's an 11-0 vote, there is discretion for whether or not the city manager is going to change personnel or change policies. And there is no democratic accountability for that. The city manager will never face a vote to get into office. They'll never face a vote to be reelected. What a mayor-council form of government, voting yes on Prop F, would put an elected official in charge of the executive branch. So when Austinites wanted a policy change in our executive branch, we could vote for that person and hold them accountable to executing it. They would have the ability to make those changes at the senior-most level, policy or personnel, to enact our values as a city. And we don't have that right now, even with our step forward with 10-1. What 10-1 exposed is it was a massive leap forward, but now we see 10-1 votes, 11-0 votes with no action. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mason and Nico, whoever wants to take that.
Sure, I'll jump in here. So the way the current system works under 10-1 and the way council currently works is if council is unhappy with the decision made by the city manager, they have the ability to remove that city manager with a simple majority vote. If the city manager exercises poor judgment, is negligent, is reckless, council has the ability to remove the city manager with a simple majority vote. That can happen at any council meeting. It is not something that happens on a 4-year cycle the way it would with a mayor. If you have a strong mayor who is making reckless or inappropriate decisions, the only way you can hold that person accountable is as voters on a 4-year cycle. So you go from an accountability period of virtually instantaneous to one of 4 years. And it simply doesn't make sense that you'd want to consolidate that much power in the hands of a political animal. Whereas with the city manager, you have somebody who is trained to run a city, trained to manage a budget, and can be removed by the vote of the council.
Absolutely, thank you. And Anna or Jason, whoever wants to take the response.
Yeah, sure, I'll take the response. I think it's great to have blinders on to actually happen and only focus on the one individual, the police chief. You know, the city council has made significant strides in reforming our police department. Not only did they cut $20 million out of the police budget pretty swiftly, they also pushed for some very significant reforms that a strong mayor could have easily vetoed because you know, he would be you know, at the whim of political actors and you know, not necessarily as accountable to the people as the 10-1 system provides. Imagine where we'd be if the mayor had the veto power over the city council currently. So, you know, to say that the strong mayor is the only way to get results is just very misleading.
Yeah, if I may agree if I may add real quick, we join Black-led organizations that for years have been at this fight. And we absolutely call to hold accountable those that were responsible for what happened last summer. And we do believe that there are needs, there needs to be accountability for department heads. But like Jason said, this proposal is asking Austinites to amass power to an unknown individual in 2022. So this is not the response. Shifting to strong mayor is not the response to address this.
Thank you all. And I drew question number 2. So, and this, this gets to both, not just the folks proposing the propositions, but also the folks in opposition to the propositions. I want to hear from both of y'all in terms of your vision. And this is actually also coming from our Facebook Live, where Steve Gerson helped contribute some of the question here today. Why is a city manager form of government more representative? Why is a strong mayor more representative? And particularly what Steve wants to know is, how is this working, the city manager versus strong mayor in other cities? Please give examples of successes and failures. And so, and the first to respond to this is Austin for All People, Mason and Nico.
Nico, do you want to take this?
Yeah, I'll take this one. The reason why a council manager form of government works for us is because, well, works for everyone, is because right now you have a hired professional that was hired by the people you elected and put into office. This person is trained and knows how to run a city. They don't get into the political mischief of what happens when you have special interests or major donors wanting to push certain values that don't match the general public. You have him or her being able to be accountable to the council, not just to talk down to the council. And that's what happens in a strong mayor form of government. You have a chief executive who won't even really be required to attend council meetings. He or she will not be able to, they won't be able to be a representative as diverse as we do when we have 10 individuals on a dais compromising and making policy for us. And that's what it comes down to, is the representation. For as diverse as Austin is, we need that type of checks and balances that make sure that all voices are heard, and not just trusting that one elected official is going to solve all of our problems, because we know that the issues of our city go far deeper than one person's vision, which is why we right now call on 10 individuals to come together to make sure that we are pushing forward values of the actual community, not just one person.
Thank you so much. And as I said before we started this debate, sometimes the rotation versus the questions might get a little hinky. And so this is going to be one of them where we have kind of both a negation and then the one in, and then the one in positive. So we have next is by the people.
Yeah, and Jason, feel free to add after me, but really, like, under a Curtis system, we have made significant gains for immigrants and for Austins in most underserved communities. So our ability to succeed is in part because power lies with our council members, not just one politician. So we need to understand that we elect city council members to represent the needs of their constituents and community, and that power is shared. The needs that are in District 4 are different than in other districts, so we need to make sure that we have someone that is responsible and accountable to those communities and represent them.
Yeah, Nico and Anna are absolutely right. I don't think there's anything inherently better than one or the other. I think that this proposal for a strong mayor will have a negative consequence on our representation. I think it's about what works for Austin and how we represent the people of Austin the most and the most directly. And right now, by having direct district representation, we have the best access to the levers at City Hall, the power at City Hall. consolidating one official over those with a veto power over all of those districts that would need to be overridden by a supermajority, that that those council members themselves wouldn't be able to discuss their opposition because they would be limited by quorum rules as they are right now, because of that's how the law works. So it's not necessarily about whether strong mayor in and of itself is bad. We think that this proposal is poorly laid out. We don't think that this proposal, a strong mayor with veto power over the district representatives, is going to be more democratic than what we have now. Progressive power is about distributing power. It's not consolidating it.
Our steering committee of 15 individuals from across the community, 60% of them were people of color, leaders in organizations that we all recognize. Our steering committee looked at mayor, council, strong mayor cities across the country to review the policies that worked well in these cities. And as a fact, the majority, 65% of the top 20 cities are mayor, council, strong mayor forms of government. They reviewed these cities because they wanted to identify what our peer cities were doing, what cities of our size were doing, the challenges that they face that are sometimes very similar to the challenges that we face. And what they came up with was a really uniquely Austin form of government in this mayor, council, strong mayor amendment, one where the council has checks on the mayor and the mayor has checks on the council. It is a co-equal legislative, executive branches of government that we're very familiar with in the federal and state levels of government, as well as the other cities, our peer cities across the country. And so we believe that 10-1 was absolutely necessary to happen. We needed district representation. We believe this builds on 10-1 and makes the council stronger than they are right now, while holding the executive directly accountable to the voters. The executive, who is the most powerful person in City Hall, holding them directly accountable to the voters. I'll just add, to the last question, it's been 66 years since we have fired a city manager. That's 17 mayors. 17 mayors have been elected since the last time we fired a city manager, because it's really hard. The institutions, the structure that we are operating in makes it really challenging to remove that person from office, and I just think that we should put that power in the hands of the voters.
I'm going to throw, sorry, Brandon. I'm just going to throw a quick curveball here at everybody. The reason being is I want to get to that second part of the question of examples of successes and failures. So I'm going to kick it back to each organization for 1 minute, Elise, in the same order, to give examples of successes and failures. Sorry to interject. I just want to make sure that we also address some of the question that was given to us. So I'm going to start with Austin for All People.
I'll answer this one, and I'll just cite Austin as it sits today as an example of success. You look at virtually any top 10 list, Austin is on it. Top 10 place to raise a family, top place to live. We have had an incredible success story over the last 40, 50 years here in Austin. We are a boom town for the 21st century. There are new jobs being created here every single day. We are the envy of the nation. And that's no accident. That is a product of councils working with city managers, working with mayors, working with community to get us to where we are today. And so I can think of no better example of success of a city manager system than what we have today and value in Austin.
Thank you, Mason. Thank you all for letting me throw you this curveball, but I just want to make sure we got to the point of each question. By the people?
Yeah, I don't know if Anna has anything to say, but Mason just, made my heart lift. He stole the words right out of my mouth. I mean, as a union member, as an activist, I go to national conferences. As my current council member boss is part of Local Progress, which is a national organization. I mean, seeing the work that we do here in Austin, the progress we've made on police reform, the progress we've made on protecting our environment, the progress we've made on a number of issues. I think Mason said it best, but pick an issue and you can find a strong, a city manager form of government, a city manager council form of government that is doing it well. Like I said earlier, it's not necessarily about there's no absolute, like, strong mayor is absolutely bad for us. We think that this proposal is bad and it was not crafted with enough community input. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And last but not least, Austinites for Progressive Reform.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
oh, go ahead.
No, Laura, go ahead, please.
Well, I just think about the bold policies that have come out of mayor council, strong mayor cities across the nation. And I think that certainly we can elect an executive with values that we hold, with a vision that we hold important. We can elect an executive who can put forward a robust housing policy, and then that executive will have to deliver on that robust housing policy. And that's a reflection of voters' values. So I think we've seen examples across the country of executive mayors taking that step to addressing what the voters ask them and tell them needs to be addressed.
And if there's time to add one more, Brandon, is there still some time?
Yeah, sure. You got about 10 seconds. Yep.
Sorry about that.
Over decades, studies have shown that mayor council cities have 7.5 points higher turnout than city manager cities consistently. And that's because voters feel heard. And so they vote again and again and again.
All right. Thank you all to your answer to that question and the follow-up. Moving now to a question related to Prop E. What impact would ranked choice voting have on voter participation or negative campaigning or otherwise? And secondarily, if voters do approve ranked choice voting, what is next? And that question will first go to By the People. The floor is yours.
Sure. Ranked choice voting, I think it has its merits, and I'm not here to denounce ranked choice voting at all. I think when we, the Central Labor Council, came out against these proposals, it was because it was clear that the impact that ranked choice voting would have on our local government was minuscule compared to the shift to a strong mayor form of government. And so we opposed the group of proposals as they were presented on a ballot, on a petition, right? They were presented as one petition where you either agreed to all of them or you didn't agree to them at all. And so from that position, we opposed them all because we saw that this was a Trojan horse. These were really nice looking things and sounding things, actually consolidated a whole lot of power within one person in an at-large election that will definitely be dominated by big money in our city.
All right. Thank you for that answer, unless you had something else to add. Didn't mean to cut you off. Fantastic. Then that will be followed by Austinites for Progressive Reform.
The ranked choice voting reform, Proposition E, which can be voted on separately. So whether or not you support Proposition F or the other propositions, you can vote yes on E to support ranked choice voting. Its effect will be anything but minuscule. To be clear, right now in the runoff elections, we go from having 61, 65, 71% voter turnout in November. We do turn out so well to 11%, 15% or 18% turnout in December. So, and those are the elections where many races are decided. So we could have 50 points more turnout deciding elections. And that means more diverse turnout too, economically, racially, in every way. So that's a massive difference. Actually, the ranked choice voting change would be the most significant turnout mover of any of the 4 reforms that are proposed here. Proposition E is a massive move for voter turnout, a huge change for democracy. And not only does it have that effect on turnout, it saves us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year as a city, not having to run those elections again. We don't have to show up and vote again. And that's much harder to vote again if you're working in a job where you can't get away, or if you're a caregiver, or if you have mobility challenges. Studies have shown that in ranked choice voting races, women candidates, people of color, and women of color in particular are more likely to run and more likely to win. And to the point about negative campaigning, it goes down by as much as 30% because you want supporters, but you also want your opponent's supporters to rank you highly. It's a win across the board for voters in Austin to adopt this Prop E. And regardless of how folks feel about the others, we really hope people will vote yes on Prop E.
Thank you. And closing us out on this question, Austin for All.
Sure. So I'll address this. As we said at the outset, our focus is on Prop F. We are interested in defeating the strong mayor proposition. That said, when it comes to ranked choice voting, I think it's an example of the flaw in the process around all of these propositions. I mean, I would say of myself, on my good days, I think I am capable of being a reasonably intelligent person, and I don't understand ranked choice voting. I've studied it, and I'm sorry, I don't understand it. And I know that Austinites who are going to be voting on this aren't going to understand it either. And it's a prime example of why, regardless of the merits of ranked choice voting, why there needs to be more time taken and greater education given to the voting public on all of these issues. And sneaking this in a May election with very little voter education is simply not good for our city, and it's anything but pro-democratic.
Great, thank you. Any other follow-up from Nico? All right, great. So next, question number 4. We know in Austin, in presidential years, we have a higher turnout. Fun fact, Travis County Democratic Party worked tirelessly to increase our voter turnout to 71% in 2020. So everyone give yourselves a pat on the back who's watching this. Our question for you is, why would having the mayoral election in a presidential year as opposed to a gubernatorial year matter? What are the pros and cons of moving the mayoral election to a presidential year election? And we're going to start with Austinites for Progressive Reform.
Yeah, really appreciate that question. Thank you, Katie. The results are huge. There's a 20-point difference in turnout between the gubernatorial turnout and the presidential turnout in Austin. That's a huge amount of people who have busy lives who are turning out in the presidential race, and we feel that they should have an opportunity to vote for the highest ranking local elected official, the mayor. You might hear that there's a lot of noise in the presidential election, and people just won't be able to focus on the mayor's race. I say we should give people the opportunity to focus on the mayor's race. And I believe in voters. I believe that they will educate themselves about the mayor's race. We have seen just as much noise in the gubernatorial race, in the midterm races, certainly with more competitive Senate races and more competitive congressional races and hopefully more competitive statewide races. There's just as much noise in the gubernatorial, and we believe that the most number of people should be able to vote for mayor, and that's why this would be a really big shift, really big improvement.
Great, thank you. And next I have Austin for All People.
Thank you, Katie. So yeah, again, Austin for All People's focus is again, opposition to Prop F. But while we're talking about it, you know, we agree it would drive up turnout to move the mayor's race to a presidential year. What we also know, and you know, Laura, you hit on that a little bit, like the noise of it all. With noise comes how expensive it is to run during these times. So when we talk about representation and who's going to be able to actually run for mayor, usually these are people that are connected to people with deep pockets that will help fund them. And you know, when we talk about, more people to vote, but who are we going to be voting for is the question. So, you know, we don't have a hard position on that. It's just something to keep in mind that if this is an amendment that we decide to take up, that would be the pro of, yes, higher turnout, but the con of who is the representation that we get to run for it being, you know, such an expensive race to participate.
Great. And last, we have by the people.
Thank you. Well, our workers' defense members decided not to take a position on this prop. And similar to what was just said, our focus is around the strong mayor proposition. However, I do think that it's important to point out that, and well, as a member of Workers' Defense Action Fund, one of the organizations that has one of the largest field programs to make sure that we're getting out the vote, especially people, low propensity voters. I just find very interesting that this process is, this was mentioned earlier too, but this process that was made in the middle of a pandemic. This process is going to be decided in a May election when we have a very low voter turnout. And this process was actually left our members and community out. We were not included in the conversations that happened or stakeholder meetings that happened when all of this was created. So we were absolutely left out. The people that have fought for years for increasing rights for immigrant families and workers were not asked. And this is why we see how the many different flaws that are in these proposals.
And if I can add a little bit to that, I just wanted to push back on something that that Laura had said. She said that we should vote for the mayor, the highest elected official in our city government. And that's just not true. The city mayor is simply another city council member. He is an at-large council member. He presides over the meetings and has some authority during the meeting to chair it. But beyond that, he's simply an 11th council member. And that is true democracy. Having a distributed system of power across districts is true democracy, not consolidating it behind one elected.
All right. Thank you all very much for your answers on that question. And I will move on to another proposition item, Prop H. And the question, which will go first to Austin for All People, is as follows. What other cities have adopted democracy dollars? What had the impacts been? And what are the concerns of adopting a program like democracy dollars?
So as mentioned previously, our focus is on Prop F. We don't have a position on democracy dollars, and so we're not in a position to answer this question.
Sounds good. In that case, the floor is now for By the People.
To my knowledge, there is there's a similar program in the city of Seattle, but I don't know any of the specifics of it. However, I do know, and as I just mentioned, that because of the process and this democracy dollars actually excludes immigrants, people with legal permanent residents and people who have been formerly incarcerated. So this just speaks again to, we're talking right now about expanding democracy, but this proposal intentionally excludes those populations. So it is contradicting that we're saying that we're trying to increase voter turnout and increase the access to democracy, but we are intentionally leaving out those populations.
All right, thank you. And finally, Austinites for Progressive Reform.
So this program does exist in Seattle, and the results have been tremendous. I'll just highlight a few of them. In the first year of the program alone, 3 times more people contributed to campaigns than had previously. The next year, it was more like 8 times more people involved in giving to campaigns. Those donors are more diverse in every way now in Seattle. More women donating, more people of color, more younger people, more people earning under $100,000 per year are all now more represented in the donor base than were before. It's also led to more diversity in candidates. Not only more candidates running, but more diverse candidates running. And then finally, it's increased turnout. If you are a voter in Seattle who votes occasionally, you are 4 times more likely to vote. 4 times if you use your democracy dollars in that process. So it has huge impacts across the board. Our program will be the largest expansion of public financing in the city of Austin's history, and most likely the state of Texas's history. It is a massive improvement over the status quo, where only 1% of Austinites donate to campaigns, and 70% of those dollars come from only 3 city council districts. We agree, we want to see it expanded. We would support any expansion to even more folks. Right now, the program gives vouchers to all registered voters. All registered voters are eligible. And we'd like to see that expanded further as well. So we're supportive of those expansions. We don't think we should, as Austinites, as Democrats, as progressives, vote no on the largest public financing increase in the city's history. We think we should vote yes and expand it.
Thank you all. And so we have our last question of the night, and then we'll have closing arguments. But before that, I wanted to give a shout out to Anna, because I know TCDP worked really hard with Workers' Defense on outreach in the runoff elections. So thank you for partnering with us in that. But for the last question for the night, there's been a lot of talk tonight about the process of bringing forth charter amendments and public input. Concerns have been expressed about the lack of public input in the process being brought forth tonight in propositions D through H. How could the charter process be improved? What challenges do citizens face in initiating these ideas? And so folks could be prescriptive about the correct way to bring forth, or the prescribed correct way in bringing forth charter amendments. And I have first in this responding by the people.
Sure, I'm glad to speak to this. You know, I think the way the charter amendment process is determined by state law, and there are only a couple of ways to do it. One is through the city council initiating charter amendments, and the other is through a petition initiative. But the problem isn't necessarily with the process itself. It's how we go about public engagement through those processes, right? The process here was a completely privatized process. There are no public records. There are no Texas Open Meetings Act requirements that were followed for this. This was a self-selected group of people, and it was entirely funded by a very small group of folks. We just inherently see that as a huge flaw. You know, how this can be corrected, I think there are ways that the city could initiate regular reviews of the city charter, and they do that every now and then. It's been a while since they last did it. But there is a process for that, and there are ways to lobby our city council to make that happen, and they're empowered to make that happen. You know, I don't think that there's inherently a flaw with the petition initiative efforts. I think there can be some adjustments made to the level of engagement that is required. But like I said, this process itself, the specific one here, is what we are opposed to.
Thank you so much. And next I have Austinites for Progressive Reform.
Yeah, Jason is right. There are 2 ways to propose a charter amendment. And in 2018, the city went through a charter revision process. They had a charter review commission that reviewed democracy dollars. And they passed it out of that committee, 7-3. They wanted to put democracy dollars to the voters of Austin, to let them decide if this was something that we should do. The council chose not to put it on the ballot. We decided to go the petition route this time for a number of reasons. We feel that democracy can't wait. We knew that we would have loved to put these amendments up in November 2020, but state law prevented us from doing that. So we knew that the Independent Commission on Redistricting was going to redistrict this coming year. And we knew that we had to ask the voters for the 11th District Amendment G to participate, for the 11th District to participate in that process. We also knew that should another charter amendment be brought to the voters, we would have to wait at least 2 years to get these charter amendments on the ballot, because you can only amend the charter once every 2 years. And that would have put these amendments that diversify and increase the electorate, increase participation, that would have put these amendments into the middle or later part of the decade. And I really want to address these process concerns, because I'm concerned that what people are saying is they're trying to disparage and discredit the work of the Black-owned, Brown-owned, women of color, local businesses who ran our community engagement process. Sharonda Robinson, Bobby Garza Hernandez, Jen Ramos. I'm proud of their work.
Thank you. And last but not least, Austin for all people.
I think we can agree. Yeah, democracy can't wait, but democracy deserves more input in regards to when we're talking about changing our entire city government. The truth of the matter is that this is during a time when people's main focus, we just came off of a very contested November election, and people are still dealing with this pandemic, and they're not focusing on what is going to be so important to their day-to-day lives. And what we've done is put forward amendments that are going to change every part of it, with the key of Prop F, which is a strong mayor form of government. Now, we talk about tonight about being the most pro-democracy city, but when we don't have the turnout that represents the entire piece of Austin for this amendment, that is not democracy. That is selective democracy. And no one's discrediting the work of hardworking steering committee members. It's the fact of that work was not shown across the entire city for input. And I think had that been a different case, a different time outside of a pandemic, we'd be seeing a different story. So.
Thank you so much, Nico, and thank you to all of our panelists tonight. We're now going to go into the final statement phase of the discussion, but I just want to thank everyone for really diving into the substance of the questions and issues presented today. There's a very robust debate on our Facebook page, and I just want to remind everyone that there are good folks on all sides of this debate, and to remember that we should focus on debating the substance of the issues, not on debating any personal attacks on each other. But with that, with the final statements and the great brain power we have here, I'm going to start with by the people. And you have each 3 minutes and divide it up however you choose fit between your representatives.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you to all the panelists for joining the conversation today. We're really grateful for this opportunity, and I am incredibly proud that for the last 5 years, I've stood alongside our members to fight for their rights and to fight for higher worker standards and paid sick leave and many other policies that have benefited working people in our city. I am extremely proud of that. So I want to leave you all with a message from one of our member leaders, Virginia Vadillo. So as members of Workers' Defense, we believe that democracy and the Austin Council should remain in an equitable manner, supporting the entire community and continuing with the ability to advance policies that the city to protect working families. Giving all the power to the mayor leaves our community at a disadvantage. This is an attack on our democracy and the work that Workers' Defense members have achieved to protect us. And this is not only of workers' defense members, but also the members of the many other organizations that for years have been doing incredible work at City Council. So if we want through progressive reform, we must always approach the conversation through the lens of elected leaders that value people over profit. Thank you so much again for your time today.
Thank you so much, Anna. Jason, did you want to add anything?
I'll just repeat what I've said earlier. You know, we urge everyone to vote against Prop F. It's an undemocratic consolidation of power behind one elected official. The claim that there is a very powerful, all-powerful administrator at the city is just not true. You know, read the ballot language. The last phrase of the ballot language itself shows that they're creating the same problem that they're proposing to solve, which is they're saying that, you know, the city manager currently is unaccountable to the city council, and therefore to the people, and that having a citywide election to elect one individual with veto power over all district representatives is somehow gonna solve this and bring about better results than our democratically elected community representatives are. And I would just urge you all to vote against Prop F.
Thank you both, and thank you for all the work that By the People is doing. Next, I have Austin for All People, Mason and Nico.
Again, thank you for having us tonight, and to all the panelists. Basically, it comes down to this: why now? Why the rush? And during what we know will be a historically low voter turnout in the month of May. We know that this dissolves representation of the people in our city by diminishing the power of our city council. And we also know that this shifts the power from a hired, qualified administrative professional to an elected partisan individual to have executive powers of our city. Keep in mind, this person runs what is a $4.2 billion budget that funds the services that we know in our city. It oversees 15,000 employees. And you run the risk of having someone who may have never run a city in their life, and we're putting so much trust in that one individual. And I also want to touch on the point, I believe it was said that we've never had fired a city manager. That's just not true. We've had several that I can think of that were forced out. And so if you're in business, you know, being forced out, asking to be resigned is getting fired. I mean, and you guys can look it up too. It's Nichols Miser, Camille Burnett, Jorge Carrasco. And, you know, so it's, if you want to talk about, you know, not getting rid of a hired professional, I can't remember the last time we impeached a mayor in Austin. So that I believe that is where we come from when we say keep the checks and balances of our current 10-1 system and give representation to all of Austin, not just one.
Hear, hear.
Thank you. And Mason, did you want to take up any of the rest of the time?
Nico's got it. All good.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And last but not least, we have Austinites for Progressive Reform. Final statement.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Brandon. As a former University Democrats president, I appreciate the work that you're doing for our community. You know, I wish we could be together in person, and I know we will be when it's safe and when it's time. I would love to see the precinct chairs that I've been working with in the campaign trenches for over 16 years now in this community. I would love to be able to see you in person. You know, we have fought alongside each other to make it easier for people to vote, to make it easier for Democrats to vote, to make it easier for Austinites to vote. We have done that together, and I'm proud of the work that we have done. We can make more progress. We can build on the incredible reforms that 10-1 brought us, and we can elect the most powerful person in City Hall. In addition, we can allow the most people to vote for the mayor on our presidential ballots. We can allow 60% of people to vote for their council member versus 10%, 11% in a costly runoff. We can fix that. And we can diversify our candidate base and get more people of color and women to run for office with democracy dollars. All of these things are proven. They're not new ideas. They're just new to Austin. And at a time when state Republicans aren't doing us any favors and are going to continue to suppress our vote, we can do something to fight back against that suppression right here in Austin, because all four of these are proven to increase voter turnout. And when we increase voter turnout in Austin, we can have an impact on statewide races and the partisan ballot. So on behalf of Robbie Osley, whose name is on the Planned Parenthood building in South Austin, on behalf of Nelson Linder, who is the president of the local NAACP for the last 20 years, on behalf of Jemu Green, nationally recognized Democratic commentator and leader in voting rights, and on behalf of the 100 other people in our leadership committee, you can go and look on our website. I know you're going to see some friends on that site. On behalf of all of these people, I ask you to consider each of these amendments individually, and I hope that you will consider voting for them and endorsing them as a party. Thank you for your time tonight.
And thanks again to all of the panelists for coming and speaking with us. It's been great to have, as Katie has said, just an absolute wealth of experience in organizing and just great people here. And so I wanted to thank you all. I wanted to thank, of course, all of the people that are watching, that have taken time out of your evening to come hear this incredibly important discussion on all sorts of issues that'll be on the ballot. And of course, I wanted to thank Katie for inviting the University Democrats to co-host this event. She's done incredible work, and I just wanted to recognize her for that in putting a lot of this together. And before I would be remiss to close without saying we've talked a lot about voters tonight. And so I wanted to leave everybody with the dates relevant for this election. Of course, April 1st is the last day for people to register to vote. And then early voting will begin on the 19th of April and run through April 27th. The election itself will be that first Tuesday in May. And I just wanted to thank you all again and look forward to the conversations that I'm sure we'll continue to have over the next month.
Thank you so much for joining us, Brandon, and thank you to all of our panelists. If you have been interested and or aggressively debating on Facebook, because I can see you all, just a reminder, the party is 100% funded by you, our supporters. So please continue to help us provide this year-round programming. We are going to do a panel a month, and so we'll continue that. Couple key important pieces of information I want to make sure everyone goes away with. First, tomorrow is the redistricting hearing. So please check our Facebook page to sign up to testify on redistricting. Again, your voice is your vote, but also make sure it doesn't get diminished by gerrymandering. So please sign up to testify tomorrow. We will also have our training committee that's chaired by Marvin and Becky. They're hosting a legislative 101 training on March 14th from 1 to 3 p.m. Featuring Stephanie Chiarello. So if you want to know all about the legislature and what does or does not work, please join us on the 14th. And last but not least, if you have an idea and you are commenting aggressively on Facebook still, because I still see the comments coming through, maybe you should consider running for office because you have a brain and an opinion. Want to share it? Run for office. Join us on March 20th on Saturday at 10 a.m. to learn about the process of running for office. But with that, I am your co-moderator, Katie Naranjo, chair of the Travis County Democratic Party. So thankful for Elise De La Fuente, our timekeeper today, Brandon Bradley, my co-moderator from University Democrats, and also, the most importantly, the staff of the Travis County Democratic Party, Cindy Flint and Brian Stoller. So we can all agree in the comments that they rock. With that, thank you all so much for your time this evening, and thank you to our panelists again for a very civilized and informative debate.